Recently, Jagex made a Reddit post and a Reddit thread asking about the visual design feedback for the Soul Die. Now, this is great, and I love to see Jmods coming to Reddit and asking for player feedback. However, there's a few things that came to mind about this, and then also I want to just give a shout out here. RS Stormy had a insanely good response to this, and I agree with absolutely everything that you're saying, and I just, holy crap, like, it's crazy. But it also made me aware of something that I wanted to make a video on. So in this video, we're going to talk about that, but also I'm going to link this Reddit thread in the description. And I also just want to make it very clear that I am super impressed and happy with the Jmods that brought this thread forwards, because this is great. The feedback from Jmods right now have been insanely good, and I love it. Thank you to you guys. You're amazing. I also want to make it clear that there is no hate to Jmods in this whole video, and if there's any in the comments, you'll get removed from the comments and won't be able to comment ever again. Okay, so with that negativeness out of the way, let's talk about this negativeness. I'm not going to go through Stormy's entire comment, but if you want to go and see it, then I'll make sure to link it in the description and you can go and read the whole thing. It is definitely a great response to what Jagex has asked for. It outlines a lot of issues, but there's one that I want to focus on and talk about a little bit more, because in my opinion, I'd say this is probably the biggest issue out of the whole lot. So Stormy said, dies were clue scroll exclusive up until last year, and with the addition of Aurora and now Souls, it's essentially the equivalent of what you did by putting Virtus into MTX that one time. And well, we all know how that went. So I don't know if you guys remember this, but I certainly do, and I made a video on it, and I was not happy in the slightest. But Jagex put the Virtus armor set onto Treasure Hunter as a lucky Virtus armor set. This was met with such a negative response because it was taking away from content in-game. It was basically removing the fact of having this as a boss drop, a unique item from a boss only that players valued, and then adding it directly to Treasure Hunter. Players weren't happy with this. This removes from the actual game content itself. I think from memory, this is the only time RuneScape players have come together and put their foot down and said to Jagex, no, this is too far, until they actually tried to throw the fresh start worlds on us in the first iteration. Then, of course, the players did it again, and Jagex said, okay, let's revise this, and then they came back with a revised option. Since the Virtus armor was put on Treasure Hunter, there has been nothing else of the like come to MTX since that date in 2019. We will likely never ever see a boss drop come to Treasure Hunter or to any event MTX, and that is great. Can you imagine if they put a blue Staff of Armadil or a green Leng or a red Bow of the Last Guardian into a Treasure Hunter event such as the one that the Soul Die has come into? Well, that's what they've done with dies, and players don't seem to have noticed that it is pretty much the exact same thing. The only way in the past to acquire dies in game was to go ahead and do clue scrolls. This is an alternative endgame way of making money in comparison to PVM. There tends to be a few ways you look at RuneScape as a whole, right? You look at people who are PVMers, they go and hunt down bosses and they kill the bosses to get the rare drop to make the money and then upgrade their gear and all this sort of stuff, right? And then you have skillers who just want to skill and make as much money through life skills and upgrading all that sort of stuff and whatever you guys do over there in your little corner of the world. No, I'm only joking, but genuinely this is another section of the way to play RuneScape. Then you have clue scrollers as well who like to go ahead and do clue scrolls. You go through, you do all the little things you need to do. Again, I'm not clued up on this. I'm a PVMer. I don't really touch clue scrolls at all. I don't understand it so much, but I know that it is a big part of the end game of RuneScape. So Jagex have taken the rewards from that and they have added them to Treasure Hunter. It is exactly the same, in my opinion, as taking a drop from a boss and adding that to Treasure Hunter as well. I see no difference in this at all. I really don't. I don't care if people just don't do clue scrolls as much as PVM. In my opinion, they are taking content that is a major way to play RuneScape and throwing it into Treasure Hunter instead because they know that they have value. This is not okay to me. The Green Santa hat and the purple Halloween mask, whatever, the discontinued rares that you released in the holiday event way back when. But dies are currently in game right now as a way for people to play the end game of RuneScape. They chase this down, they do as much as they possibly can to get these very quickly, and it is a major part to what people do. They focus on it, they get achievements with it, there's a full community around it. It is one of the sections that make RuneScape RuneScape. Now I'm going to hold my hands up and say I should have noticed this when the Aurora Die come out too. I should have made a fuss about it as well. I don't do clue scrolls though, and I didn't even hear if people were saying this then, and if they did, I'm sorry that I didn't make a note about it then as well, because I personally feel like I should have said something and I just didn't even recognize it. That being said, I don't think that my video here is going to make a difference anyway, but I do think that the RuneScape player base should make a fuss about this because I think it could lead into much worse things. I want to make it very clear that I have no problem with Jagex making money and profiting, and they're a company at the end of the day. They need to make profit. That is their main goal. But it is important that we don't let them take things from the content of the game that players love and reduce that value from it. Now, I'm not just talking about the GP value of it. I'm talking about the value of actually doing it itself. Just imagine the exact same scenario again. You log in one day to find out that the Staff of Armadyl that you spent hours grinding and enjoyed doing that because you like killing bosses is now on a Parcels of the Dead event. The only difference is this Staff of Armadyl is bright orange instead of being green, right? That's exactly what they're doing to the Clue Scroll community, and I don't think it's okay. Some people are going to say this isn't the same thing. You can't compare a colored die to a boss weapon, but in fact I completely disagree with that, and I say this isn't a colored die. This is content that could have been given to the people who do clue scrolls. The die itself is the reward. For example, look at different tiers of clues. I don't know them off by heart, but I understand that a hard clue will give you different tiers of dies than a elite clue or a master clue. The die itself is the reward. It is exactly the same as saying, hey, look, this boss drops level 80 weapons and is easier to kill than this boss that drops level 90 weapons, and that is easier to kill than this boss that drops level 95 weapons. The weapons is the reward, the armor is the reward. However, with clue scrolls, the die is the reward. So instead of adding these dies to the MTX events, they should have put those version of dies in clue scrolls. Maybe made a new level of clue scrolls for people to do that takes longer. Maybe it's completed in a different way, but it still has the same feel and the same sort of content driving it. The reward is the die, and taking that colored die and just throwing it onto something else is removing from what you could have increased the actual quality of content for other players in the game. Now, why should you actually care about this anyway, especially if you don't even do clue scrolls? Well, first of all, I want to say that will we ever see dies come to clue scrolls ever again? Will we ever see an improvement in clue scrolls when instead of making a die for that, they could just throw it onto Treasure Hunter? Why would a company want to do that when they can profit off it more by just throwing it onto an event, right? So we may never see anything improve from clue scrolls now. They may be the same forever. That might be it if we don't say anything about it. But at the same time, Jagex tried this with Virtus Armor. There's no reason they won't try it again because, hey, everybody was okay with it with the dies. Players are now more accepting with MTX. Maybe now's the time that we can go ahead and add in a tier 85 version of this weapon, but it looks completely different. It does the same thing. It acts exactly the same, so they don't have to complain that you're adding new weapons into the game, like new specs or anything, but only on Treasure Hunter. It's the same spec, all of this sort of stuff, but it just looks different. Maybe they'll accept that. Guys, this is bad. This will be really bad. And if they got to the point where they're adding a different version of, I don't know, a Noxious weapon or a freaking Staff of Armadyl or anything like that, same spec, same way it acts in game, but just looks different, would you guys be okay with that? Would you be happy to have a Noxious Scythe come into the game? It's the exact same spec and everything like that, but just looks different? I don't know. I wouldn't. Again, Clue Scroll community, if you guys made a fuss about this with the Aurora die and I just missed it and didn't actually notice, I apologize. And if I had, I would have made this exact same video then too. But Jagex, to me, this isn't it. These need to be added as content. You need to redesign something that is new and use that on your Treasure Hunter things instead. So I'm pretty confident that if you just made a from scratch cosmetic override that had the amount of detail and effort that the Staff of Armadyl has on it and put a tradable token for that on one of these events, they would do just as well. There's no reason to take in-game content and do it because you already know that it's quality. It's just lazy. Come up with something new, put a ton of effort into it, and then sell it to your players. Community will likely be happier with this and receive it better as it doesn't interrupt their gameplay, doesn't devalue their current items. And of course, it will look overall better on the company because you have taken into account what the players have said and you have acted upon it. So while, like I said earlier, I expect this video to do absolutely nothing about the issue, I would still like to say, Jagex, it's time to show your players that you really, really are listening.